Hey everyone, this is Elfwink. Today I'm going to talk about the hassle I went through to get an Xbox controller for my PC. So, I've been wanting to play PC games with a USB controller for quite some time, but kept putting it off. As far as I understand, any controller with a USB connector should work on a Windows PC. However, some types of controllers require additional emulation software and fudging around with DLL files and stuff to get things working smoothly. I did a lot of research via Google, Wikipedia, YouTube, and some forums, and it turns out that official Xbox controllers and third-party controllers should work happily under a Windows environment. I didn't want to spend a heap of money, so I had my heart set on a Rock Candy Xbox 360 controller because they were cheap and they looked kinda cool. And I figured since they were licensed by Microsoft, then they should operate under the same firmware protocols and all that, and pretty much every website and most of my friends say they do. However, the people at the game store were highly reluctant to sell me the Rock Candy controller because I don't own an Xbox, and in hindsight I probably shouldn't have told them what kind of system I was buying this controller for. They were also reluctant to sell me an official Microsoft controller, so I went home with this odd generic controller that kinda looked like an Xbox controller, and I was a bit disappointed. Although it looked like an Xbox controller, my computer didn't recognize it as such. So as it turns out, there were two kinds of input protocols for PC games: direct input and X input. X input is the newer type and has a greater range of game support. X input is also the format used by Xbox 360. Direct input is an older format and may require you to install some weird third-party software which has no affiliation with the official manufacturer, and quite frankly I'd rather avoid because some of those websites look dodgy. And on a side note, if you try to convince me to download software or patches from some unofficial place and assure me it doesn't have any malware, I'm going to assume it has malware and say no. And on another side note, I also avoid purchasing hardware unless it's like Razer or some known brand from places like eBay, because there's a high chance that it's, made in, some kind of place where they have lower quality standards than what's acceptable for the Australian market, and will most likely fall apart out of the box, as I found with a set of headphones that I bought from eBay. And besides that, there's no way to tell if it's a knockoff or if an official Microsoft product. They've put all the same logos on the box and everything, but it's just an imitation. So back to the main story, I could only deduce that this weird controller was based on the older direct input protocol and thus would require fiddling around to get it to work with PC games. Not fun. In the end, I took the weird controller back to the shop and was served by a different person who was happy to exchange it for a legitimate Xbox controller. And sadly not the Rock Candy controller. In the end, if you're a PC gamer and are on the market for an Xbox controller, avoid telling them what system you're buying it for, or shop somewhere where they're not likely to chat and ask you questions, or try your luck online or with a second-hand purchase. Just make sure it is an official product so you know what you're getting. Thanks for listening, and I hope my story saves you some trouble.